Welcome back, everybody, to Ripon Lodge for part 2 of our series on Richard B. Black and his Antarctic service and career. Part 1, we talked about the expeditions prior to World War II. Up through 1941, he was working on the United States Antarctic Service, sort of cataloging all the information from his East Base scientists and crews, compiling it all into a final report to Congress and to the President. Unfortunately, in 1941, in the midst of writing this report in D.C., he was called up to active duty from the Naval Reserves. For the short term, that didn't really mean a whole lot. He was sent to Anacostia to study at the Naval Intelligence Training Center, and then was sent to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where he'd lived for many years before the war, to serve as an intelligence officer on the staff of Admiral Husband Kimmel. December 7th, 1941, he is the Assistant Operations Officer on duty at Pearl Harbor in the midst of the attack, and is one of the first men to start making calls to try and wake the base up. His wife Eliza and their son Doug, he tells them to head into the hills to some friends and then come back when he says it's safe. He'll spend his World War II service in the Pacific, in amphibious forces, and with logistics on several different amphibious invasions, including Saipan, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Okinawa, and the occupation of Japan. 1945, he is released from active duty. He is still working for the federal government as a civilian in the Pacific, as he had done before the war, but this time he's working for the Pacific Development Company, which is administering what's essentially the Marshall Plan for the South Pacific. This is a photo kind of from the middle of those years, taken in 1944 for the Honolulu Star, of him in his naval uniform on one of his craft. So during this time period and afterwards, he's still not given up on his Antarctic work. 1955, 1956, he will be involved in the planning for Operation Deep Freeze 1. There's been a series of Operation High Jumps, High Jump 1, being the most prominent one. They were more military exercises. It was basically proving the Navy could operate in the Arctic and Antarctic to the Soviet Union. Deep freeze, however, would be a return to scientific exploration and expeditions, with the purpose of establishing permanent bases there for the International Geophysical Year, to study magnetism, to study the atmosphere, the Van Allen radiation belts, and climate, geology, and all kinds of things about the Antarctic continent and about the world at large. His role, he was to be the base operations officer. So his responsibility was planning and designing facilities, constructing the bases for scientists to operate from, for the Navy to operate from. However, as the operation wound up, Admiral Byrd, who was still in charge of U.S. Antarctic projects, died, leaving him basically to wrap up the whole operation in the end, along with other Navy officers on staff. That would be his last long-term expedition to the Antarctic. His final returns would be in 1957-58. He would be with the Belgian Antarctic expedition, following up on the work done the previous year for the International Geophysical Year. He would accompany them for about a month, January, February, 2 months, studying the work they'd done and reporting back to the United States Antarctic Project Office on the research that had been done by the Belgians. His final visit and his first visit to the actual South Pole, very bottom of the world, came in 1961. It was a VIP trip in January. It's the middle of Antarctic summer. He, along with Senator Groening of Alaska, who was a longtime friend, and several other Navy officials, went on a trip for about 4 days to the Antarctic station at the South Pole. And that was it. That was the first time he actually went to the South Pole and the last time he went to Antarctica. He retired from the Navy Reserve that year and then retired from federal civil service by the end of the decade. And spent more time here relaxing into the 70s and 80s, even while living most of the time in Georgetown. We'd like to thank you for following this series. If you'd like to learn more about Admiral Black, about Mr. Wade Ellis, the Blackburn family, the Atkinsons, or just about the full story of the lodge here, one of the oldest homes in Prince William County, come and see us sometime.